I had to pick which one of my family would die. The house sighed. Not a creak, not a groan of settling wood, but a long, drawn-out sigh that vibrated in my teeth. Sarah hadn't heard it. Thomas was too busy wrestling with the moving boxes, and Emily, ever the observer, was sketching in a notebook, oblivious. Eleanor, Sarah's mom, was happily settled in her armchair, a book in her lap, seemingly immune to the strangeness that had begun to cling to the place like morning mist. We'd moved to upstate New York for a fresh start. A bigger house, better schools, a quieter life. The two-story colonial, with its faded blue shutters and sprawling front porch, seemed perfect. Naive, maybe, but perfect. It started subtly, a light flickering in the hallway, a cold spot near the staircase. I'd chalked it up to old wiring, drafts, the usual anxieties of a new homeowner. I'm an accountant. Numbers are my comfort, and irrational things, well, they just didn't compute. But then came the whispers. They started low, like static, barely audible. I'd hear them at night, just as I was drifting off, a chorus of voices just beyond the edge of hearing. I thought it was stress, the pressure of the move, the looming tax season. Sarah suggested I cut back on caffeine. One afternoon I was working from home, hunched over spreadsheets in the den. Thomas was outside playing, Emily was in her room. Sarah and Eleanor had gone to the grocery store. The house was quiet, almost eerily so. That's when I heard it, clear as a bell, leave. It wasn't a shout, not even a yell. It was a calm, almost conversational voice right behind me. I spun around, heart hammering. Nothing. The room was empty. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. I tried to convince myself I'd imagined it, that I was losing it, but the cold sweat clinging to my back told a different story. That night, Emily woke screaming. She claimed a man with no face was standing in her room. Sarah comforted her, attributing it to a bad dream. But Emily wasn't prone to nightmares. She was a bright, imaginative kid, but grounded, sensible. This was different. The incidents escalated, doors slamming shut on their own, objects moving from one place to another. One evening, Sarah found all the kitchen knives neatly arranged on the living room floor. Thomas started talking to an imaginary friend named Mr. Whispers. He'd sit in the corner of the living room, giggling and chattering to thin air. I tried to rationalize it all. Gas leaks, carbon monoxide poisoning, anything that made sense. I called an electrician, a plumber, even pest control. They found nothing. I started researching the history of the house. The town archives were surprisingly sparse. The property had changed hands several times over the past century. There were rumors, whispers of a tragedy, but nothing concrete. Then I talked to Mr. Henderson, our elderly neighbor. He seemed friendly enough at first, offering us cookies and welcoming us to the neighborhood. But when I mentioned the strange happenings in the house, his face darkened. That old place, he muttered, his eyes clouding over. It's got a history, bad history. He wouldn't elaborate, just shook his head and said, "Some things are best left buried." That night, the whispers coalesced into words, sentences. They taunted me, mocked me, filling my head with dread. They knew my deepest fears, my insecurities. They knew my family. And then, the voice. It was calm, disembodied, utterly devoid of emotion. It spoke to me in the dead of night when everyone else was asleep. "You have a choice to make, Mark," it said. "A difficult choice, but a necessary one." "Who are you?" I stammered, my voice trembling. "What do you want?" "I am the resident here, and I require a sacrifice." My blood ran cold. "A sacrifice? What are you talking about?" "To appease me, to ensure the safety of the rest of your family, you must choose one of them. One of them must die." I thought I was dreaming. A nightmare so vivid, so real, it felt like I was trapped in a waking hell. "If you do not choose," the voice continued, "they will all perish. Within a week." I wanted to scream, to run, to wake up from this nightmare. But I knew it was real. The cold dread in my gut, the icy grip on my heart, it was all too real. I tried to tell Sarah. I stumbled over my words, trying to explain the whispers, the voice, the impossible choice. She looked at me with a mixture of fear and pity. "Mark," she said softly, "you need help. You're not yourself." I tried to convince her, to show her the evidence, but the phenomena seemed to subside whenever she was around, as if the entity was toying with me. Sarah made an appointment with Dr. Harding, our family doctor. He listened patiently to my story, then prescribed me anti-anxiety medication. He said I was suffering from stress and sleep deprivation. He didn't believe me. I was alone. The voice grew stronger, more insistent. It showed me visions of what would happen if I didn't choose. Horrific images of my family suffering, dying. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I was consumed by guilt, by the unbearable weight of the decision. I found myself staring at my family, analyzing them, weighing their lives against each other. Emily, my bright, sensitive daughter. Thomas, my energetic, innocent son. Sarah, my loving, devoted wife. Eleanor, frail and dependent. How could I choose? How could any parent choose? I spent hours researching paranormal phenomena, seeking a way to break the curse, to banish the entity. I tried everything, salt circles, sage smudging, even consulting a dubious psychic who charged me a fortune and told me the house was infested with malevolent spirits. Nothing worked. Detective Miller, a local police detective, started sniffing around. The neighbors had reported strange noises coming from our house, disturbances in the night. He interviewed me, but I was too erratic, too panicked to be convincing. He thought I was hiding something, and he was right, just not what he expected. With each passing day, the pressure intensified. The voice gave me graphic details of what would happen if I failed to choose. It whispered names, scenarios, twisting the knife in my already shattered heart. Sarah started noticing my strange behavior, my gaunt face, my bloodshot eyes, my constant agitation. She confronted me, demanding to know what was going on. I broke. I told her everything. The whispers, the voice, the impossible choice. I watched as the color drained from her face, as the fear in her eyes turned to horror. She didn't believe me at first, but then she started seeing things too. A shadow moving in the corner of her eye, a cold breath on her neck, the unsettling feeling of being watched. She started to believe. Together, we tried to find a solution. We scoured the internet, consulted with paranormal experts, even revisited Mr. Henderson, who refused to speak to us. Time was running out. Detective Miller, after digging deeper into the history of the house, discovered a disturbing secret. A previous family had lived there a century ago. The father had gone mad, murdering his wife and children before taking his own life. The house had been vacant for years, rumored to be haunted. The final night arrived. The deadline was midnight. The voice was relentless, demanding I make my choice. It promised to leave the rest of my family in peace if I sacrificed one. But I knew it was a lie. The entity manifested physically, a swirling vortex of darkness, a presence so malevolent it felt like the air was being sucked from our lungs. It filled the living room, looming over us, its eyes burning with cold, ancient hatred. Sarah, Emily, Thomas, Eleanor, and I stood huddled together, facing the darkness. The entity pointed a spectral finger at each of us, one by one, as if making its own calculations. "Choose, Mark," the voice boomed, echoing through the house. "Choose now, or they will all suffer." My mind was a blank. I couldn't think, couldn't breathe. My heart pounded in my chest, a frantic drumbeat against the silence. I looked at my family. Sarah, her face etched with fear and determination. Emily, clutching her teddy bear, her eyes wide with terror. Thomas, oblivious to the danger, burying his face in Sarah's leg. Eleanor, trembling with age and fear, whispering prayers. I couldn't do it. I couldn't choose. "I won't," I screamed, my voice raw with anguish. "I won't choose. You can take me. Take me instead." The entity laughed, a cold, mocking sound that sent shivers down my spine. "A noble gesture, Mark. But it is not your life I require. It is a life from within your family." It raised its hand, its fingers contorting into claws. The house began to shake, the windows rattling, the walls groaning, the air crackled with energy. Then it happened. Eleanor gasped, clutching her chest. Her face turned pale, her eyes wide with terror. She slumped forward in her chair. Grandma Emily screamed, rushing to her side. Sarah and I knelt beside her, desperately trying to revive her. But it was too late. Eleanor was gone. The entity seemed satisfied, the shaking stopped, the darkness receded. The house fell silent. Detective Miller burst through the front door, his gun drawn. He stared at the scene before him, his face a mask of shock and disbelief. "What the hell happened here?" he stammered. I looked at Sarah, at Emily, at Thomas. They were alive, spared. But at what cost? Had I made the right choice? Had the entity simply taken the weakest among us, the one who was closest to death anyway? Or had I somehow orchestrated Eleanor's demise, condemning her to save the others? The questions haunted me, twisting in my mind like poisoned barbs. I didn't know if the entity was truly gone, or if it was simply waiting, biding its time. We left the house. We couldn't stay there, not after what had happened. We moved back to the city to a small apartment, a world away from the sprawling colonial with the faded blue shutters. But the darkness followed us. Emily still has nightmares. Thomas still talks to Mr. Whispers, though he's quieter now, more secretive. Sarah is distant, her eyes filled with a sadness I can't reach. And I hear the whispers. They're fainter now, less insistent. But they're there, a constant reminder of the choice I made, the price I paid. Sometimes I catch a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye, a shadow, a flicker of movement. I tell myself it's just my imagination, stress, sleep deprivation, but I know the truth. It's still here, waiting. A rocking chair sits on the porch of the new house. It rocks gently and slowly in the dead of night.